Morning, everybody. 9 o'clock, Friday, February 11th. Just got the notification for recording, so I'll start over. Welcome, everybody, to the Baltimore County Delegation meeting for Friday, February 11th, 2022. Today, we will be hearing briefs from speakers, Chief Joanne Runn from the Baltimore County Fire Department, Senator Chris Van Hollen, U.S. Senate, and we have 4 bill hearings as well as 5 bills to vote on. So I'll just ask members to make sure we'll offer one question to some of the speakers if you have them, and try and keep that in mind while we're going to move through our business today. So with that, I believe we have Chief Runn in the room.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Good morning.
How are you?
Good. When you're ready, go ahead and start.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me here today. Let me introduce myself. I am Joanne Runn. I am the Chief of Baltimore County, and I appreciate this opportunity to speak to you about our department and what I see as our most important issues. I was brought in 2019. I have nearly 35 years experience in the fire service and all within the Baltimore region. Here in Baltimore County, I'm focused on several things. The very first one is creating a culture of inclusiveness, respect, and teamwork. The health and safety and fitness levels for our fire and EMS personnel are extremely important. And then we also need to assure that our continued relationship between the career and volunteer members are very constructive and productive. We are one of the leading departments.
Hey, Joe, what's up?
Yeah, Rick, you called.
If everybody could mute themselves, please. Sorry, Chief, go ahead.
It's okay. We are one of the leading departments in the nation when it comes to employment of women, which we're very proud of. What we have here is we have an advantage because we do have an EMS-only hire area, and that tends to attract a lot of women to this department, which we are very excited about. We are also known for our tactical rescue expertise. We have a lot of our members that are on the FEMA task force for deployments when they have floods, hurricanes, and other disasters. And we enjoy a very positive relationship with our residents and our constituents in making sure that they get what they need, and they're very appreciative of that. So every fire and EMS service is unique in its structure, as I'm sure you've heard several times. Our demographics and operation is a little bit different. We're extremely large, an extremely large county, as I'm sure you know, with a diverse geographical area of about 610 square miles. And so that creates quite an interesting response profile for us because we're in urban, suburban, industrial areas, small towns, rural areas. And then a lot of times we're out where areas do not have public water systems. So water is a challenge in that aspect. We are one of the nation's largest combination fire departments, and we're all hazards. So what that means is we do fire, we do EMS, we do rescue, we do technical rescue, we do overland rescue, we do confined space, going down in those tunnels in the ground. And that is provided, honestly, by both our career and our volunteer. We responded on the Baltimore City explosion when those homes exploded down around the Pikesville area. And our team was right in there and working right next to Baltimore City. And we were there for the largest metropolitan in Maryland, the largest mutual aid response in providing them support so that they could mourn their loss just recently. So to go back to Baltimore County, we have 1,000 career responders. What that is the paid employees, and they staff 25 career fire stations. And then we have approximately 3,000 volunteers, which are a combination of administrative, and they do a lot of the fundraisers and help with the administrative functions of the volunteer companies. And then they also incorporated in that number is the response volunteers, and they're combined into 29 fire stations. Those fire stations are only volunteer fire stations, so we're a little different from our surrounding jurisdictions when the career combination systems in the surrounding counties have career and volunteer members in the same fire station. We're different. We have volunteer stations and career fire stations. While volunteer stations are independent nonprofit corporations, when they respond on an incident, we do work together, and our career officers are the officers that are in charge over top of those incidents. Some key notes for our volunteers: they provide all of our heavy rescue capabilities. They provide all of our waterway capabilities. So they're the ones with the fireboats and the specialized units, and then they also provide EMS as well. Baltimore County supports the volunteers through grants and subsidies and utilities and other ways. And then we also provide them low interest loans so that they can help purchase equipment. To give you an example, a fire engine costs about $750,000 and an ambulance costs about $350,000. So we do our best to help them out in that aspect as well. In addition to that, we provide them financial incentives to staff those medic units because we only have a limited amount of medic units within Baltimore County. So we do our best to incentivize the EMS personnel within the volunteer side to staff those medic units. So we provide some additional financial incentives in that way. So across the country, it has to be noted that it is increasingly difficult for the volunteers to get members and to maintain members. So we're doing everything that we can to support that and to help foster that. But if you all have any ideas whatsoever on efforts that we can do to help them, we're more than welcome. We're more than interested in hearing that information. So to give you an idea of how many responses we go on every year, we handle about 135 to 140,000 incidents every year, and about 75% of those calls are EMS calls, and that is growing, and that is a continued challenge because our hospitals are also having an issue with keeping up with those call volumes. So if you stack up the hospital not being able to handle the patient care coming in, and then the ambulance is hanging out to wait to drop those patients off, then that also leaves a lag in the system for us being able to get care to our persons, our citizens that are out there waiting. As a matter of fact, what we did was we changed our means during the COVID crisis this time recently, and we identified that low acuity calls could be transported in another method, not necessarily in a medic unit. We had our EMS supervisors taking someone with a cut finger that needed a laceration sutured to the hospital. We had fire engines taking people to the hospital just so that we could get them to the hospital in a timely fashion, and they weren't waiting terribly long to get an EMS unit. I must note as well, all of our people are cross-trained, so they're not just firefighters taking them. They all have medical training, and they can all take care of the citizens. So across the nation, the structure fires seemingly are decreasing. However, the fire deaths are increasing by about 24%. And we're working very diligently with our fire marshal's office and our fire investigators to identify some preventative programs that we can put in place, because they tend to lean more towards the vulnerable populations that we end up having that issue. So we're working very diligently in trying to create programs and assist in overcoming that hurdle. Our biggest challenge by far is funding. We're seriously underfunded compared to similar jurisdictions. To give you an example, Prince George's County, who is right around the same size as us and serves very similar to the amount of constituents. They have 33 volunteer fire stations versus our 29. Their budget is $223 million. So it's $110 million more than our budget. So that just kind of gives you an idea of where we're at funding wise, and we're very creative with how we make things work and how we get our ends met. Like PG and other metropolitan departments, we must cover 24-hour staffing within our career fire stations, and we have a requirement which is set by a national standard to staff those fire stations. But we also provide support services, so code enforcement, recruitment for our hires, safety and education for our outreach program for our citizens, maintenance. We have special operations, as I said, within our FEMA systems, in addition to our local areas. And then we also provide EMS service support in the aspect of we have a nurse on board that helps us refer patients that are continued called and repeat patients to the actual care that they may need. So they may call us simply because they need medication or if they haven't had food in 4 or 5 days. So we try to actually connect them with the proper resources to get what they need to get. And it's been a tremendous program that has worked very well for us. And that's done in the combination of us and our health department, our local health department. So we're very thankful for that. Our career department consists of 74 fire engines, 10 trucks and volunteers as well, 2 tower ladders, 58 advanced life support units, 6 heavy rescue units, and then there's various specialized units such as boats and brush trucks and things like that to take care of it. So to take care of whatever the issue is that we may have, or the problem, or the fire, or the need. Someone may have fallen on a trail and hurt themselves, and we have to go back and get them. So the various pieces of our equipment are identified and are put in place based on what the needs are for the county. Our medic units see a far more response level than any of our other units, and we have to replace them about every 3 to 5 years. So if you remember just a few minutes ago, I talked about $350,000 for a medic unit. We're talking about every one of those medic units being cycled every 3 to 5 years, and there are 58 of them. So to give you an idea of where those finances hit. And our medics are also seeing an increase in challenges with mental health because of all of the high level of needs that our citizens have right now with care medically. They're seeing much sicker patients right now than they ever have before because of the impact of COVID. And we're working very diligently to provide them the mental health support that they need and get them the extra programs within the county. The county's done a phenomenal job with assisting us in that as well. As you know, our county is an older county, so the inventory of our facilities is quite old. Our Catonsville Fire Station that we're working extremely diligently on right now has been for about 2 years. It was built in 1928, has maybe had one upgrade to that facility about 50 years ago to actually put a bunk room up top of the engine bay so that they could have facilities to shower and sleep and restroom facilities there. That building is plagued with problems, and I'll give you an example. We had a serious issue beginning the last 2 years, and we're constantly monitoring it because OSHA has put a mandate on that. And essentially, we have oil bubbling up through the basement floor of that fire station, and it is restricted for any of our personnel to go down through in that area. So we're looking for another location and a way to actually build them a new fire station and get them out of that station. Also, our volunteer station, our oldest fire station, was built in 1902, and that's the Lansdowne station, and they're both Catonsville and Lansdowne are both operating out of their original structure. So it's quite interesting. They've been doing very well with doing the best they possibly can with those structures, but those facilities are going to have to be upgraded and replaced very soon. The pandemic, as I talked about earlier, has created additional financial and staffing pressures, and we thank the state and the federal government for their support in light of that. That has helped us significantly. But in addition to that, we've seen the great resignation hitting us really hard, and retirements have occurred at a significantly higher rate. So we have got to work very diligently to hire classes at a larger size than we have. However, our academy training facility does not accommodate that large of a class. So we're working very diligently with the county right now to try to identify an additional site where we can host our classes in a larger venue so that we can bring personnel in at a quicker rate, because our attrition rates are just crazy right now. And we need those class sizes to get them in and to replace them. Baltimore County is very frugal and very resourceful, and we understand that the county has many needs, and we fully appreciate and are so thankful for our county executive who last year invested tens of millions of dollars. That apparatus that I was talking about, replacement, he really stepped up and helped us to make a significant effort in the stride to start getting us on the rotation of replacing that equipment. And we're extremely thankful for that. Our needs continue to be daunting, as I'm sure you probably hear over and over and over again throughout the state. However, we are very thankful for any assistance that we can possibly get. And we're also working very closely with the county with regards to an efficiency study that was just recently conducted. And interestingly enough, they have identified, just as we have, the exhaustion rates of our personnel, the stress, the burnout, and the increased behavioral health challenges that we have because of that. And that includes our administrative personnel that are not necessarily out there on the units responding every day. They're trying to get payroll through. We've seen a high level of retirement on the administrative personnel in the offices as well, which of course causes one person to do 2 and 3 people's jobs. And we're working very hard to try to get those replacements taken care of and get them hired. In closing, I hope I kind of painted a good picture for you of Baltimore County, and we would be grateful for any support that the state could provide, any ideas that you may have for us. We have a very close relationship with Pat. He's wonderful. We're looking hopefully in the very near future to replace our Catonsville Fire Station and the Lansdowne area as well. And also our fire academy is next up on that, because we've got to provide the proper training to be able to support the Sparrows Point area, which is bringing in a great amount of business to the county and the state. But we've got to be able to make sure we cover whatever services it is that they need for emergent needs down there as well. So thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and I'm open to any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Chief.
I know that was a lot.
Oh, good. Appreciate the update. It's good to hear from you and just get an update for what our fire posture is for the county too. So opening it up for questions from the members. Delegate Ebersol.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your presentation. And in 2 different steps in this presentation, you mentioned 2 firehouses that are squarely in my district. Catonsville, which is pretty functional, but probably quite old, and Lansdowne, which is tucked away in a place where it's nearly impossible to get a truck out. I know that Lansdowne, there's land set aside. Do you have any idea where you are in the process or what kind of encouragement you're getting about having a new fire station built in Lansdowne along Hollands Ferry Road?
So I am familiar with that site, and what we're looking at is, does that actually meet the adequate needs of that area? So to be fiscally responsible and to honestly to look at what is happening with the volunteers across the nation, we really need to take a look at how we're providing service and where we're actually housing these services from. Does that fire station look like a combination fire station with career volunteers in it moving forward? Maybe. And what does that look like? So if we would build a fire station for Lansdowne, currently right now, Lansdowne is struggling to get their units out every single day. And we know that. So we're looking at avenues to assist them with their staffing and what can we do to get them, to put them in a better place. Their location is horrible. It's absolutely horrible.
Yes.
And it's very difficult for them to access the main roads and get to where they need to get. But the first thing they need to do is staff their units to get them out the door. So how can we help them do that? Does that mean that maybe we start out with helping them with a crew on the ambulance, a crew on the fire truck? Does it look like just a driver because they don't have drivers? We're looking at all that right now, sir. And we also need to replace our Halethorpe station, which is almost just as old down in that area. It would be much more responsible to combine that effort and make it a dual station. So there's a lot of discussions that have to happen in that aspect.
Well, thank you. And thank you. And we can talk offline if I can be supportive at all. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Other questions for Joanne Run, Chief, run. See one from Delegate Terry Hill. Delegate Hill, can't hear you, but you're not muted. One second.
I'm still talking.
There you go. There you go.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chief Run. It's good to see you. Thank you for all the work you've been doing. You mentioned something about the psychological stress, I'm sure, which has really increased during COVID. The 911 Next Generation Commission has legislation to allow, frankly, our 911 dispatchers to get workers' compensation for PTSD and other stresses. That Bill 439 is coming up this Tuesday. Can you speak to how significant this is in terms of your staffing issues? What are we seeing with our dispatchers as well as our face-on first responders, because they're certainly first responders?
I could understand that the dispatchers would have challenges with that. I have to be honest, ma'am, they are underneath of another chief. They do not work directly for the fire department. They work for Chief Tammy Price in Baltimore County. So they're separate from us. But the important note about the dispatchers is the dispatchers receive the emergent call that comes in, but they don't necessarily know, they don't have closure. They don't ever get closure with knowing how that call turned out unless we close that loop for them, which we try to do as often as we can. So I could see that. I could definitely see that. And I've taken a look at, the atmosphere and all that when I was up there, because we do have administrative duty officers, and what that is they are liaisons between the dispatchers and the fire department to help the dispatcher understand what may be needed for a different type of call that doesn't necessarily require the call dispatch profile that it has there. So they're kind of a subject matter expert to help them work through those nuances. So I can definitely get that information for you. I can definitely tell you, get the information to let you know how it's affecting our 911 system. Our police department has gotten a grant, and there will be a professional within the 911 system to help them, because the police department deals with a lot of mental health patients as well. They get a lot of calls for disturbances, and then we find out that there is an actual mental health component there. So our mobile crisis system has actually, if I'm not mistaken, there's going to be a position in a 911 system to help them work through those type of calls and get that person the additional help that they may need. And that may also help the dispatchers because they'll be in there with them every day. So that's a good thought on that also. As far as our providers, I can tell you there's a location called the Center of Excellence that the firefighters go to quite often. And this year we have had a lot of personnel. We've seen an increase in that. We've seen an increase in DUIs. We've seen an increase in drug-related incidents. Our people are super, super, super stressed out. And the solution to that is finding better ways for the system to work, I believe. But in the meantime, we've got to get them the help that they need and provide them the peer support avenues to get them to the resources that they need as well, which we're working very diligently. You know that you mentioned Bill 439. Could I ask a little bit about that?
We can talk offline. I'd be happy to share that with you. And
thank you. I'd be very interested in that.
Okay. May I have one follow-up briefly?
Go ahead, Delegate.
Thank you. So Chief, you also talked about the how overwhelmed the EMS personnel are with the number of calls. Do you have any idea what percentage of those calls are transferring from another medical institution, say a Kaiser or a clinic or a patient first to a hospital, as opposed to going to a home or a business? How many of those are just medical to medical transfers that you guys are having to handle?
I don't have that right offhand, but I certainly will get that information for you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Chief Run had a particular question might be helpful for some members as well. When a fire happens and we have constituents, Baltimore County residents that are affected by it, or they lose their home and they lose their lose everything. What's the best way for us to connect them to resources? And I know that there are services through the fire department, but could you maybe educate us on what we have best way to connect them to something to get them in housing, get them clothing, connect them to get them back on their feet?
Absolutely. And thank you for that question. That's an excellent question. Well, on every incident where we are going to have a constituent that is, our citizens are not in, would not be in their house, we immediately bring in a resource manager for that. In our case, it is Dave Bykoff, who's our emergency manager, and he actually has the connections to connect them with the health department, with housing, with any of the agencies within your county or within our county that may be able to help. It could be Health and Human Services. It could be housing. It could be, it could simply just be a location or a hotel for the evening because they've got to figure out how housing is going to get them a location. A lot of times it ends up being apartment complexes with that aspect, but then their insurance company is also help as well. And we try to relay whatever information that we can with that also. So we bring someone in that essentially works with them directly and immediately on that incident, and we put them in contact with whatever resources it is that they need.
That's good. One that's good to know for all of us. And are we able to, you tell me, are we able to follow up with Mr. Bykoff about a constituent that had an incident and if they've been placed somewhere, or they can't share their contact information, but at least trying to connect us to them if we want to try and be helpful in that situation?
Absolutely.
Okay. Good to know. Appreciate that. I see one last question from Delegate Bob Long.
Thank you. Great presentation. I actually had talked to some volunteer fire department that ran a fireboat, and they have this great looking piece of equipment that doesn't have engines on it, and they're struggling to get it back running. And we have over 200 miles of shoreline in my district, well, in Baltimore County, and I was just amazed that they're telling me that they can't get 2 new engines for this, and it's a right new piece of fire equipment. It's a fireboat, and I just wondering, is the fire department going to look at that? I mean, given what happens out on the water, it's so critical to have someone show up as quickly as possible, because when someone calls Mayday, there's a problem. Usually a boat on fire, somebody's drowning or something. And to have a piece of equipment like that just sitting there looking like a piece of jewelry or whatever, I have a hard time with that. Thank you.
Yes, sir, Delegate Long. So we just received that request last week, and we are working through that process with them. So the fire department supports the BCDFA, which is the Baltimore County Volunteer Firefighters Association, in deciding how they are going to distribute their capital funding money or their extra 508 funding. They have already pre-identified where a lot of that funding goes. We sit down in the meeting early on, and actually before the budget is allocated and before we know the 508 funding that comes out, they have a needs list and a list already identified for what goes where. I, of course, require them to hold back a certain amount of funding for emergencies such as this. So right now, this company is in line with other companies to determine whether or not that funding can be allocated for them to replace those motors. Understanding the need for the waterways and the limited resources that we have on the waterways, that obviously will play a very big part in that decision, sir.
Well, thank you so much. It makes me feel safer knowing we're going to get new engines for that piece of equipment.
Yes, sir.
All right. Chief Ron, thank you, one, for presenting to us, and thank you and your staff for the work you do. We know it's dangerous work. I think that was also shown by everyone the last few weeks with the deaths of 3 firefighters in Baltimore City. So thank you for the work that you all do and putting yourselves in harm's way for us. So thank you.
Pat, I can't hear you. I don't know if anybody else can, but I
Oh,
couldn't hear you.
Is anybody else able to hear me on that one?
You're very muted.
Try and move closer. My fault. Mainly just thanking you for the work that you
There
do
you are.
and presenting to us and giving us information. We'll stay in touch and work together to try and make you guys' lives easier.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
I'm looking in the waiting room and Barb, do we have our second speaker in yet?
I don't see him.
He should be on in like a minute. So if you want to pivot or wait, whatever you want is fine, but he should be on in 1 sec.
Gotcha. I would, if it's 1 minute, if I pivot, he'll be waiting for 5 minutes. So let me, we'll hold on for one minute and wait for him to pop on in so we can let him get to the rest of his day as well. So thanks, Mandy.
Barb, could you play the Jeopardy tune, please? That would help.
Sorry for the delay.
Oh, no, you're fine. You're fine. Sometimes it doesn't always link up. If we were in person, everybody would stand up for a minute and shake their legs. So now that we're just on Zoom. Does anybody have the menu for the canteen in Annapolis today? We could read that off to anyone in Annapolis. Senator, welcome. Welcome, Senator Van Hall.
Mr. Chairman, how are you?
I'm good. Sorry to throw you right into the fire there, sir. We our timing worked out like almost perfect. Almost. I'm sorry.
Well, sorry to be a minute or so late, but it's great to be with you and the Baltimore County delegation. And so do you want me to just jump in and all right.
Yes,
well, let me first of all, thanks for the opportunity to join you. And I want to start by thanking all of you for the work that you've done during these very difficult times for Baltimore Countyans and others in our state. And it has been an honor to partner with you, and Senator Cardin also sends his best wishes. Obviously, we work as a team along with our House members. What I thought I'd do is just give you a brief update on what some of the things we've done and where we're going, and then happy to try and answer any questions or any comment or listen to any comments you've got. So it was about a year ago now, March of last year, that we passed and the president signed the American Rescue Plan, which really did two big things. One was it helped deploy a lot more vaccines more quickly to where they were needed and more equitably. And of course, the other thing it did was provide a sort of economic safety net to families, to workers, include everything from the individual payments to extended UI for people who lost their jobs because of the pandemic, and a lot of help to small businesses through the PPP program, but also nonprofits because obviously they were hit hard, and other venues because obviously venues that focused on the arts or culture, nobody was going out, and so we extended help there, as well as directly to schools, to all the schools in Baltimore County, all the universities and colleges and community colleges. And so we also provided monies directly to Baltimore County, 160 million. So we look forward to continue to work with you on the allocation of those funds that went to county government. But what I wanted to stress, and what I think all of you know, are the monies that went to the state. And I see Speaker Jones here, and all of you, of course, have a big stake in how those $3.7 billion are allocated. And I will say that Senator Cardin and I know other members of our delegation, have had some frustration in tracking the use of those funds. And we look forward to working with all of you to make sure that they're deployed in the best and most effective way. I was pleased to see, last year, $300 million were deployed for high-speed internet and broadband initiatives across the state. Additional funds can be used for that purpose or other purposes as well. So that is something we'd like to work with you on because the state in a few months will have to report on how it's used those funds in order to access the other half of the funds. Those $3.7 billion come in two tranches. Half has already flowed, the other half will flow later. That's true as well for the funds that went to Baltimore County government, for example. So that's one major part of the federal relief effort. In addition, we passed the Infrastructure Modernization Bill, signed in November. And I know you're aware of it. I just want to underscore the magnitude of the dollars. These are really badly needed, as all of you know, to repair and modernize our infrastructure. $7 billion will flow to Maryland over the next 5 years. So $7 billion over the next 5 years for roads, for bridges, for transit, for tunnels, for a whole range of infrastructure projects. And the monies I just mentioned, the $7 billion, flow through the State Department of Transportation. They through the state. So all of you have, influence and impact over that. I know, having been in the state legislature, I know that sometimes it can be really difficult to get the Department of Transportation to focus on, priorities, but that you have. But I do want to mention that those funds are already flowing. I mean, we just a few weeks ago announced $400 million for bridges in Maryland. Before that, hundreds of millions for highway projects. And as I say, it's in every category of infrastructure. Beyond the formula monies that come to Maryland, there are also large federal funds that can be accessed by the state or by counties or municipalities for in a competitive grant process. And happy to work with you, anyone who wants to pursue some of those opportunities for the state or for Baltimore County as well. But I did want to mention that. Finally, we are working on the annual appropriations process in the Congress right now, and looking forward to meeting the needs of Baltimore County. I was just out at Trade Point Atlantic with County Executive Oshevsky and the governor the other day. And just to give you one example, in 2017 and then again in 2020, the federal delegation was able to secure a combined $30 million to help improve the facilities there at Trade Point Atlantic, especially the ability to offload from ships at the terminals that are being built there, which of course makes it easier for a company like BMW to be able to use that facility in the way they are as a distribution center. And obviously there's a great convergence with the port. And as part of the infrastructure bill, there's $80 billion in national funds for ports, and we are working with the Port of Baltimore to make sure that they can access those funds to meet their needs and continue to grow that port, which has a huge economic impact on the entire Baltimore region. So those are part of the annual appropriations process, those kind of funds. And I think the event we had just the other day was an example of how those can be put to very good use to generate more jobs and economic opportunity in Baltimore County and the entire region. Finally, we are working on the other part of what President Biden refers to as the Build Back Better agenda. We're not going to be able to pass the full bill that came out of the House of Representatives. We are trying to, get over the finish line some key pieces, reducing the cost of prescription drugs, finally giving Medicare the power to negotiate prescription drug prices. That's something many of us have been working on a long time. Reduce the cost of quality childcare, which is through the roof and which has resulted in many parents not being able to, get back into the workforce. And also the other part of our efforts to deal with climate through deployment of more clean energy and dealing with the resilience issues and impacts from climate change. And so we're dealing with those pieces, and I hope still to get those done in the coming months. So let me stop there. Thank you all again for being great partners in this effort, and for what you're doing in Annapolis, and happy to try and answer any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. I see a question from Delegate Bhandari.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And Senator, you and your staff have been tremendous help to my office over the last couple of years, from helping our constituents with immigration issues or postal service issues. And your staff work incredibly hard for the people of Maryland. And the quick question, and it is great news that House recently passed the Postal Service Reform Act. I'm wondering, 92, I believe, representative did not vote for the bill. Do we have enough bipartisan support to defeat potential filibuster in the Senate?
Well, Delegate Bhandari, thank you for all your good work, and it's been good working with you and your team on these issues. We desperately need this postal reform bill to pass. It's been years in the making. It is bipartisan overall. And the short answer to your question is, I do believe that we will have the votes in the Senate to overcome the supermajority requirement, the filibuster requirement. There are a couple issues that we're still working through, but we've got to get this done. And beyond postal reform, which will relieve some of the financial pressures on the Postal Service, we're also working as a delegation to try to address the really poor performance, at least in the previous year, especially in the previous holiday season, but continuing of a lot of the post offices, both around the country, but also in the Baltimore area. And in fact, there's going to be a hearing, in Baltimore coming up next week, organized by some of our folks in the House delegation. Congressman Rupersberger, Congressman Fume will be part of that as well, because we asked. I chair a subcommittee that now oversees the post office, and we have been really pushing them hard to address the performance issues in Maryland and the Baltimore region.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Delegate Cardin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator, for being here. I'm going to pose the same question that I posed to Senator Cardin last week or a few weeks ago regarding climate change, the Build Back Better, and it kind of being separated into smaller packages. And can you highlight whether we're going to get enough bipartisan support on legislation that is of as existential importance to all of us, which is dealing with climate change? That's number one. Number two is simply, I think that the continuing resolution either has passed or is about to pass. Is there going to be, can you just highlight what's going to happen with the budget and whether we're going to get a budget passed in the next few months? And then the third thing is, thank you so much for all your help with getting money for arts, particularly for arts venues. Save Our Stages was hugely grateful for everything you guys did. But this is an ongoing concern because it's taken a long time for those venues to be able to become, get back to business. So I'm wondering, you talked a little bit about it, but is there any long-term idea about continuing aid for arts projects?
So Delegate Cardin, it's great to see you, and thanks for hitting on these three issues. Let me start with the last one. I mean, we are looking at we're looking for opportunities for continued help with small businesses, especially restaurants that have been hard hit. And Senator Cardin's been very involved in that as the chair of the Small Business Committee. But just as we recognized in the American Rescue Plan that nonprofits and other venues, arts venues, were hard hit, we're looking at that. I will say, and I mentioned earlier, the $3.7 billion in federal funds that are flowing to the state of Maryland, they can be used for that kind of purpose. They can be used for, entities, businesses, nonprofits that have been hit hard by the pandemic. And so again, that is I believe, an eligible use of those funds. Regarding our own budget process, as you say, we expect to have a continuing resolution through March 11th. Hopefully we won't have any problem getting that extension through the Senate. But then we do hope to have our full appropriations bill to meet the priorities of the new year. We are way behind at the federal level. Our fiscal year began October 1st. We're essentially on automatic pilot with last year's budget. And we want to renew the budget so that we can focus on the priorities that have emerged over the last year. And I hope that we can get that done. I am on the Appropriations Committee, and we're working diligently. We have a framework agreement finally, and that's as of 48 hours ago. And we hope to be able to move forward. And that also, Delegate Cardin, may be able to provide some relief to some of these venues through the normal funding channels, but with some increased funding as well. Finally, in terms of the Build Back Better agenda and climate change and how we break these things out. So there's the good news is that I do think that of the Build Back Better agenda that passed the House, there are a couple areas where there is agreement in the Senate. I will say, to answer your other question, unfortunately, the agreement does not extend in this case to our Republican colleagues, and that anyway, that's a statement of fact. That's not intended as a partisan statement, but we do not have support for the climate change part of that bill, the clean energy piece of that bill, nor do we have agreement on the reduction in the price of prescription drugs by giving Medicare the authority to bargain, nor do we have an agreement on the issue of reducing the cost of affordable childcare through this way. So the bottom line is we're going to have to get 50 Democratic votes in the Senate. And I do think in the areas I just mentioned, we are going to be able to ultimately get agreement. I can't guarantee that, but the Build Back Better bill has, as you know, many other provisions in it. But those provisions that I just outlined, the climate change provisions, prescription drugs, hopefully lowering the cost of childcare, those are some things where I think that we might be able to get that over the finish line. And the climate provisions are substantial, and they include everything from trying to deploy more clean energy and energy efficiency provisions to the resiliency factors, dealing with the impact of and costs from climate change. I was talking to some folks from the Annapolis area recently. There's a vivid example. I mean, the cost of trying to raise the docks down there. The Naval Academy is getting, is incurring lots more costs as well. So That was a three-part question. Sorry for the long answer, but that's where we stand.
Thank you, Senator. Delegate Metzger.
Yes. Thank you, Senator Van Hollen, for being here. I appreciate it. It was a great event the other day to visit with you a little bit. My question is kind of tagging off of Delegate Bhandari's. As you know, 3 or 4 months ago, we had an audit in our hands from the post office, and it's kind of been crickets. Can you kind of give me an update what's going to be happening with the audit? And then my second part of the question is, are we doing anything to get the ships off of the coast of California?
Right. Well, it was great to see you the other day at the Trade Point Atlantic event, and also thank you for your continuing efforts on the post office issue. So, in terms of the postal reform, the Inspector General at the Postal Service did an investigation nationally, and they identified problems across the board that have been created by some of the decisions by the post office, including, Postmaster DeJoy. But they also identified certain areas that were especially special hotspots in terms of bad performance, and the Baltimore area was one of them. And so we are continuing to push the post office to implement the recommendations that were made in that Inspector General's report. And they've made some progress, but they have not implemented all of those changes. And you and I have talked about some of the other accountability issues as well. So this is why the hearing was scheduled, to put even more of a focus on the problem and increase the pressure for change.
I'd like to be kept in the loop on that, if you wouldn't mind.
Absolutely. And that one is being organized by Congressman Rupersberger and Congressman Mfume. And so I'll make sure that our team on this call, and I want to thank my team here. Mandy's with us on this call, and Mandy Heinel, and we'll make sure that we get the information to you, okay, about that.
Thank you.
I believe that it's set for this coming Monday, if I'm not mistaken. But so in terms of the, you asked about the supply chain issues and the backup.
Yes, the ships in California.
Yeah, I mean, look, there have been big issues with supply chain around the world. And, given the fact that products these days have components that people sort of merge from different sourcing all over the globe, the pandemic has had a big impact on supply chains. And we've seen that obviously with automobiles and semiconductors and supplies there, that's driven up the prices. So we're trying to sort of go after these choke points. And that is a work in progress. The biggest issue there is defeating the pandemic, and not just in the United States, but around the world, since some of the product sourcing obviously comes from different areas around the world. So look forward to continuing to work with you on that front.
Thank you, sir.
As the Port of Baltimore said, we in Maryland are trying to take advantage of the long lines off the California coast by diverting some of those ships now to the Port of Baltimore.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Last question goes to Delegate Brooks.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Senator, for all you do for the state of Maryland and for your presentation this morning. Oftentimes we hear about our First and Second Amendments, but there are three others that sort of has tremendous appeal in certain communities. That's the 13th, which freed us, the 14th made us citizens, and the 15th gave us the right to vote. So it seems like that latter one is somewhat under assault now. So can you speak to us about the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and what efforts are being done to perhaps try to get that passed?
Yes, Delegate Brooks, and thank you for raising this issue. This has been the source of enormous frustration, and it is very upsetting to see what's happening because it was a year ago, January 6th, that we saw the attack on the Capitol, and that was, of course, a deliberate effort to overturn the results of the election. And when that violent attack failed to accomplish its goal, it didn't end the big lie. I mean, the big lie did not die there, right? The poison has traveled around the country. There are 19 state legislatures that are in the process now of enacting laws to make it harder for people to access the ballot box, and especially targeting people of color and African Americans. And, we know this because courts have looked at it. They looked at an earlier effort a number of years ago in North Carolina, and the federal courts determined that the changes in voting laws had targeted the African American community with, quote, surgical precision. And so this is why I believe it's essential that we pass federal legislation to establish a minimum set of voting standards nationally. States can still, allow, they can build on that, but we should have minimal voting standards that apply to early voting, to issues surrounding absentee ballots, so that states can't enact laws that are designed to make it harder for certain people to vote. And that's what the Freedom to Vote Act did. And the John Lewis Act was designed and is designed to repair the damage that was done to the Voting Rights Act by the Supreme Court decision in Shelby v. Holder, Shelby, Alabama. And here's the, and I know this is a long answer, but just bear with me for a moment, because I was in the House when we did the last reauthorization of the Voting Rights Act. It passed with a huge bipartisan vote. And in the Senate in 2006, when we extended the Voting Rights Act, it passed without any dissenting votes. And it was like 95 to nothing. Okay. That was in 2006. The Supreme Court in 2013 then ate the heart out of that bill when they shot down on a 5-4 decision of the court the pre-clearance provisions saying that if you'd been a state that had a history of discrimination in voting, before you changed your state laws on voting, you had to get the Justice Department to look at them and determine that they were not designed to make it harder for people to vote. That was the pre-clearance provision. The Supreme Court shot that down, even though the Congress on bipartisan basis had passed it overwhelmingly. So what we're trying to do in the John Lewis Act is simply repair the damage done by the Supreme Court. In fact, the Supreme Court in that case said to Congress, your formulas are outdated. So update your formulas. So we rewrote the John R. Lewis Act to apply to every state and every jurisdiction. So we weren't just focused on certain states with a history of discrimination, but we wanted to make sure that no state, Arizona or whatever, would do this. But even though we had overwhelming bipartisan support back in 2006, we don't have bipartisan support for this. And it is, in my view, a sad sign of the times. So I believe we should change our Senate rules. We have this ridiculous rule, in my view, that requires a supermajority to move forward on big bills. And, that means that 41 out of 100 senators can block action on major pieces of legislation. We, of course, have this exception for things that deal with taxes in the budget, but we don't have any exception for bills to protect our democracy, which just shows the in my view, how crazy the underlying rule is. Anyway, I sorry to go on, but thank you for asking this question. It is, I worry about the future of our democracy, and we need to get this done.
Thanks, Senator. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, and Senator, as always, appreciate your presence here, your willingness to speak with us and be a partner. I'm sure some of us will take you up on working with your office when you're going into the appropriations process and working on the budget. So please, thank you, and don't be a stranger.
Thank you. Great to be with all of you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Of course, welcome. So we are going to move into bill hearings. First bill that we're going to hear, going a little out of order, HB 460, Baltimore County Alcoholic Beverages License Transfers. Sponsor is Delegate Guyton. Delegate Guyton, you're ready, and I believe you have one speaker or more than that.
Yes, I believe we have two. But so for the record, Delegate Michelle Guyton, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm here today to request your consideration and support of House Bill 460, Baltimore County Alcoholic Beverages License Transfers. In 2012, this delegation passed legislation that authorized up to 25 on-premise alcoholic beverage licenses to be transferred out of election District 15 to other districts. The reason is that District 15 was and continues to be oversaturated with licenses with more than twice the allowable number based on their population. So the bill that I'm presenting today, House Bill 460, as amended, and you do have the amendments in front of you, allows licensees in all election districts that are oversaturated, including District 15, to sell their licenses to businesses in other districts with a limit of 2 license transfers per district and no transfers in oversaturated areas. So this bill is very similar in posture to the 2012 legislation. It has the same restrictions that are in that bill. But in addition, this bill requires appropriate community safeguards that were not included previously in the legislation. So I introduced House Bill 460 because it's really important, I think, to small businesses, particularly in more rural areas like my district. Friendly Farms Restaurant is in 42B, and it's been in business for more than 50 years, but it has never had and does not have a liquor license, and it cannot get one based on the population formula. So I believe Chris Wilhelm was going to speak this morning. I'm not sure if he's with us, but if he is, then he'll speak more to their situation and why they support this bill. So we worked with the Licensed Beverage Association, the county executive's office, while drafting this bill. And like I said before, they've introduced a friendly amendment that conforms the bill to the current description you're hearing right now. So I ask for your support for House Bill 460. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Mr. Wilhelm, are you here?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, all. My name is Chris Wilhelm, and I'm part of the 3rd generation at Friendly Farm. Friendly Farms were started by my grandparents in 1959. It's been run by our family for over 63 years. As my sister and I look forward to the future, we see the opportunity to grow our restaurant business in the coming years. Over the many years we've been in business, we have received many inquiries from customers asking if we serve alcohol, or sometimes they will come in and just assume that we serve it and become very disappointed when it is not available. We've lost many customers and events within our on-site banquet hall because we were unable to serve alcohol beverages. We currently don't have a liquor license and have been unable to obtain one to this point. With being in the hospitality business, we need to do what we can to provide for our customers if we want to stay competitive in this industry. As Baltimore County tries to build their tourism industry, we feel that we are 100% in line with this. We're a destination restaurant. People drive from all directions, including the surrounding states, to come to a one-of-a-kind country setting and enjoy a great meal. We are ready to build on that and provide more memorable experiences while also helping Baltimore County build on their increasing their tourism business. I truly believe that a liquor license will open the door to new customer opportunities for our business, including local and non-local residents. We expect this to significantly boost our restaurant operations and our on-site accessory activities. My family and I are very excited for the future of Friendly Farm. We hope to have the opportunity to keep building on our business so that the next generation has the opportunity to be part of it as well. I hope that the delegation will vote to support HB 460. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. And Delegate Guyton, who else do we have, or did you have on the bill?
I was expecting Marta Harding.
Gotcha. Do we have Marta? Are you in the room?
I believe I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, you are.
Good morning.
Thank you so much. Good morning to the delegation. I'm here today for the record, Marta Harding. I represent Friendly Farm Restaurant. You just heard from Mr. Wilhelm. I want to thank Delegate Guyton for introducing the bill. I also want to thank, we worked really closely with the Licensed Beverage Association in preparing the bill, and we really appreciate their willingness to work with us on the bill. And of course, the County Executive's Office, who we have been working closely with on to address some concerns that they had with the bill as introduced. Delegate Guyton did an excellent job describing the bill, so I'm not going to repeat that. I just want to emphasize, as introduced, the bill was just a narrower version of what you passed in 2012. Limited to District 15, but only 5 licenses. I want to emphasize the bill with the amendment continues to be narrow in the sense that we are only talking about 5 licenses, and it's a shorter time period over the course of 3 years. So that's been retained. In all, we think the threshold in the bill of 15% of oversaturation being the threshold is an appropriate one, not limited to District 15, but captures only those districts where there are more significantly more licenses than the population formula would allow. So for those reasons, we hope the delegation will support the bill with the amendments, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Marta. We have one more speaker in favor, and that is Mr. Jack Belani. Are you here?
Good. How are you? Jack Milani, representing Licensed Beverage. We do like the bill. We do have some concerns with one amendment, and I've shared that with Marta, and we're trying to work through it. In the amendment, it talks about they have to somehow show what the future use of the property is. And I think somewhere along the line, we forgot that not every licensee owns the property. So they can't really do that. So we're trying to figure out a way to kind of take care of what the county's concern is, but not put a tenant who is going out of business at the mercy of his landlord. Sometimes they can't sell these as a going concern. No one wants them as a going concern. And if you don't own the property and you can't sell it, then under this bill, we're afraid they're going to say, well, the person who owns the property can't identify a use, so you can't move that license. So I think if we put some people together, hopefully we can work something out. I do have a meeting this morning with the county executive, and I plan on discussing this. But as far as the bill itself, I think Delegate Guyton and Marta Harding have done a great job trying to define some avenues. And I think hopefully with the help of some folks, we can try to figure out how we differentiate from the licensee that owns property or a licensee that is just a tenant. And hopefully we can get to the subcommittee with that within I don't know when they're going to meet, but hopefully they're not meeting Monday or Tuesday.
Thank you, Mr. Melanie. And Delegate, I had Jack on as favorable, as he is favorable. I would have mentioned favorable amendment. So now that everybody has spoken, we have nobody in opposition. Are there any questions for the sponsor or the panel members? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to HB 347, Baltimore County Superintendent Election and Recall Procedures and Compensation. Delegate Bodler, are you prepared? And do you have a panel?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I do not have a panel, so.
Oh, good.
Great. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the Baltimore County delegation. I'm here today to discuss House Bill 347, which is Baltimore County Superintendent Election and Recall Procedures and Compensation. House Bill 347 would make the county superintendent an elected position that Baltimore County voters would choose every 4 years. The bill outlines a residency requirement of 30 days before individuals file their candidacy and specifies a level of experience they must have to qualify as a candidate. Under this bill, any candidate for county superintendent must have at least a master's degree with 20 years experience in that degree, or they can have a doctoral degree with 10 years experience, or they have to have at least 5 years experience as a public school principal or dean of an institute of higher education. A candidate may not qualify for being nominated by a political party. Making this a nonpartisan election. And once elected, the county superintendent is limited to 3 consecutive terms. Now, the county executive or the county superintendent will get to select an assistant superintendent, subject to the approval of the school board. The assistant superintendent shall meet the same qualifications that are under the bill for the superintendent. Now, if a vacancy occurs, the assistant superintendent shall serve the remaining of the term and select an interim assistant superintendent, again, subject to the approval of the county board. HB 347 specifies that the county board can remove the county superintendent by supermajority vote. It also outlines in the bill the process for voters to be able to recall the county superintendent and specifies the conditions under which the voters can initiate this process. Much of the bill's fiscal impact would only come from the process of conducting a recall election and only in the case of a recall collection. This bill is necessary because it will allow the voters of Baltimore County to hold the county superintendent accountable through the election and recall process. It will ensure the position is given based on qualifications and experience and not partisanship. This bill will maintain high selection standards while increasing the public's involvement in our county public school system. One of the reasons I brought forth this bill is because when we look at the county budget, 49% of the county budget goes to education. That's somewhere around $2 billion. And then there's another 5 or 6% that is for maintenance or construction projects. Now, the county executive controls basically the other 50%, and the voters elect him. And the voters have a say if that county executive is not doing a good job, or if the county executive is putting money in areas that the voters don't feel is necessary. They have a recourse there. The problem with the way the system's set up, and this is pretty typical around Maryland, is that you have one person controlling 50% of the county budget, and the voters have no say. And I think that's important that we have transparency here. This is about transparency. You know, we know, for instance, what the county's executive platform is. He comes down here and he talks to us about it. He lays it out. He puts it on paper. We see it. And then we have the opportunity to question him about that. We know what the sheriff's platform is about. We know what the state's attorney platform is about. We also know what they're getting paid and what their benefits are. But we don't know that with the superintendents. This process would be nonpartisan, just like how judges are elected. And it's important to note too, that under compensation, that the superintendent salary at least equals that of the county executive, and the board cannot go more than 20% over it. And during the term that the superintendent would serve, they can never decrease that amount. Parents and voters need to know what the superintendent stands for before they take office. Giving the public the right to know, to hold them to the standards that they said they were going to set when they run for office. That's very important. And I do want to say that, you know, some people feel that this may be an attack on our current superintendent. It is not. I personally believe that this current superintendent, although I have my disagreements with him, has done a pretty fair job overall. I am concerned that, a lot of parents feel left out. They feel that they really don't have the say that they really feel that they want. So with that, I encourage the delegation to pass this bill out and give it a positive vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Bodler. Any questions for the delegate? Seeing none, moving to one person in opposition, we have Mr. Roland Patterson. Mr. Patterson, go ahead and unmute yourself. And you have 2 minutes. If I didn't mention it before, speakers in opposition or support have 2 minutes to speak on the bill.
Good morning, and thank you for this time. I am a legal analyst with the NAACP of Baltimore County. From that perspective, we all share a common interest in the welfare of our county and our school system. And so I just wish to ask some questions for the delegation to consider and to possibly ask your council. Those questions are as follows. Does the education article section 4-401 establish that the superintendent will be elected or selected rather by the school board? Does that same article establish that the superintendent is the CEO of the school system? Are we, by virtue of HB 347, carving out Dr. Williams from all of the other 23 superintendents who exist in the state of Maryland today? And if that is the case, does that not undercut what the sponsor of the bill just said with respect to this bill not targeting Dr. Williams? Stated differently, why is not his bill focused on all 24 superintendents? Is not the problem he articulates with respect to the budget true in all 24 jurisdictions? If that is the case, is it not more likely that this is a follow-up from last year and that this is really about the ransomware attack where the FBI was called in as opposed to the county police? I'm wrapping up. You need to ask yourselves whether or not there'd be an equal protection claim that might lie here. Do you know that the school board voted unanimously in opposition? I'm sorry, sir, were you about to say? Has my time expired?
You can just summarize, sir.
All right, very well, very well. I just want us to be able to work our differences out collegially. And I believe that this bill is a result of our failure to do so. Thank you very, very much for your time.
Thank you. I see questions from Delegate Impalaria and then Delegate Brooks. Delegate Impalaria.
Yeah, Mr. Patterson, you spoke about how this singles Baltimore County out, but the same bill is in Harford County. And the truth of the matter is that we have over 20 some school boards in the state, and those 20 some school boards are all done in different ways. Some are fully appointed, some are partially appointed, some are fully elected. So one size doesn't fit all. And when you're starting something like this, and this isn't targeting anybody, this is just saying that when a person is in control of 50% of the county's budget, that person should be directly answerable to the voter, to the students, to the teacher. And right now, that is not the case. We have, yeah, there is. So I guess my question is, why do you feel that it's okay that we have different processes for school boards, but we can't have different processes for the superintendent of schools? Why is for the superintendent, one size fits all, but for school boards, it's not the same? And they pretty much have the same function. So
because of the,
go ahead, Mr. Badger.
Because of the Constitution, because when you accept an employment position, there are various due process rights that attach to your job. And the likelihood is, I haven't studied the superintendent's contract, but the likelihood is that there are far greater due process rights with respect to separation pursuant to his contract than will be the case pursuant to this bill. So we're reducing his protections. And let me just close by saying that I am the son of a school superintendent. And so I know about these protections, and I know that they are a substantive part of the job. And so the superintendent is uniquely situated as he is distinct from the school board. It is not an analogous comparison, with all due respect.
And just to follow up,
one last follow-up.
I do believe that you're saying he has certain protections. Maybe he should no longer have those protections. Maybe he should be answerable, whether it's a man, a woman, or anyone else. They shouldn't have those protections. They should be answerable to the voter every 4 years. And that's what this bill is trying to get at, is to make him answerable to the very people that he gets the money to take care of the schools and the person who's in charge of our most valuable asset. So thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate Brooks.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. This is for the sponsor. Under current law, there are 5 particular reasons why a superintendent could be removed from local office. Could you articulate those 5?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Okay, under current law, there are 5 reasons where a superintendent could be removed from office. Could you articulate any of those 5 reasons?
I'll be honest with you, I do not know that. I do know that in the bill that we have, under recalling a superintendent, there are a number of reasons why you cannot, why a superintendent cannot be recalled in certain circumstances. But I can find that if you want that.
I know it, sir. One is immorality, misconduct in office, insubordination, incompetence, and willful neglect of duty. I was looking at the fiscal note on this, and then Baltimore County said it's going to cost them about $1 million.
Yeah, it's actually $1 million.
Oh, sir, allow me to finish. DLS says 1.6 million. Now, the superintendent's salary is like $290,000 a year. So you're going to be spending like 1.6 million, just to recall. Why not just wait it if the person is violating any of these rules here, any of these obligations? Why not just let him go? Just don't renew the contract. And secondly, do you think that this is a prudent and effective way of spending the taxpayers' dollars?
Well, first off, the figure that I had was 1.2 million. So it seems to be a fluctuating number, but that money only incurs when there is a recall. And I think it is important that when the voters elect a superintendent like that, we're talking about somebody who controls 50% of the county budget, that yes, it may be necessary to do that, despite what the salary may be. There are a number of reasons in the bill that they cannot recall the superintendent. So it can't be just frivolous. For instance, if the current superintendent had not been in more than 90 days, you can't do something like that. If a recall election had been determined in the county superintendent favor in the last 6 months, you cannot do that. For instance, the superintendent.
You've answered my question, sir. You've answered my question. Thank you, Delegate. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Delegate Bill Castro.
Delegate Butler, it's my I don't have the bill in front of me, but my question is, would the superintendent have to be a resident of Baltimore County to run for this seat? I'm assuming the answer is yes.
Yes, and if you remember early on, I said they'd have to be there, they'd have to move and live in Baltimore County 30 days before they express their candidacy.
So my question is, currently, we have elected members of the school board, and we struggle to recruit and retain individuals that are willing to run for the school board. So my question is, are we shortchanging our children, our students, our families by only limiting who can run for this seat to those that live in Baltimore County? Because oftentimes we recruit individuals from other states, other jurisdictions. And if we can't even find people who want to run and stay and maintain their position on the Baltimore County School Board, how are we going to recruit the best people to run our school system here in Baltimore County?
Well, I think you have to remember, we have a lot of qualified people right now that could step up and serve as superintendent if it was necessary. I believe that it is important to have that person here in the county where they're going to serve. There have been instances because other areas have done this. This is not new. Right now, there's over 300 local jurisdictions who have an electable superintendent position. And this was put out by the United States Department of Education in a report that they did, where it shows electable position versus appointed position. So I do believe that we will have a lot more qualified candidates than you think. Also, you do not necessarily have to have an educational background to be able to do this. We have hospitals, for instance, that are run by people that are not doctors. There are a lot of institutions that are done like that. So this does not necessarily mean that you have to have that educational background. Now, the difference would be that if you didn't, you will have to appoint a superintendent who does have that background.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate Ruth, last question, Delegate Hill. When you're ready, Delegate Ruth.
Thank you. Sorry, I was looking for the unmute button. You'd think I'd know where it is by now. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just a quick question, Delegate Butler. You keep saying that the superintendent controls 50% of the county's budget, but doesn't the Board of Education vote on the education budget?
Well, you're right, but we have to remember at the end of the day, he does not even have to follow their recommendations. You know, if you remember last year, I had a bill in that would have allowed them to had a budget analyst and also to have an attorney in representing him. You know, they can make changes. The county executive can make changes. You know, the county council can make changes. But at the end of the day, the superintendent can take that money and spend it as he wishes. And I've seen this over the years. I have fought in years past, like when Ruppersberger was in, I proved to him by showing him what 3 county budgets looked in a row and where the money went. And even to his credit, Ruppersberger tried to hold up millions of dollars, but in the end, that particular superintendent did what he wanted with the money. So it's about accountability here. It's about transparency here. It's not about the individual. You know, like I said before, this present superintendent seems to be fine. I don't agree with him on some policies, but he's done, I think, a very good job. So this is not about him, but this is a trend that is happening around the country, and more we're starting to see that. Like I said, according to a report that was put out by, you know, the State Department of Education, there are over 300 local jurisdictions that have moved in this direction. Now, some, I will tell you, have moved.
I think you've gone beyond my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Last question, Delegate Hill.
Thank you. Delegate Botella, I'm going to follow up a little bit on Delegate Ruth. I thought the superintendent is the employee of the elected and appointed school board. And my understanding is your bill is saying that he should not be answerable to the board, who actually does control the budget. The board controls the budget. But he's the executive that they hire to administer their things. So how does your bill change the relationship? And isn't that just creating an additional elected position who's accountable to no one? accept the voters, and which means that if they're not interested in running for office, they don't have to do anything. And now you've got, I mean, I'm not sure who controls the budget under your bill, because right now the school board controls the budget, not the superintendent.
No.
So can you help me understand that?
My question or my bill doesn't address that. That relationship is still there. We're not, we're not trying to say that, that the board controls the budget or the superintendent. They have a relationship to each other. Each group represents a different population.
No, sir.
And
I'm
so
sorry.
this doesn't affect that at all.
Okay. All right. So, but right now the superintendent is their employee. He works for them. They work for us. Under your bill, he can't work for them if they don't employ him. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. So you don't, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Thank you to the sponsor for bringing the bill. Moving to HB 680, Baltimore County Property Tax Credit Supermarkets. Delegate Brooks, when you're ready.
Thanks, Mr. Chair and delegation members. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before you on HB 680 as Baltimore County Property Tax Credit Supermarkets. For the record, I'm Delegate Ben Brooks, represent the 10th Legislative District here in Baltimore County. HB 680 provides a property tax credit for supermarkets located in a food desert retail incentive area. Yeah, the USDA defines a food desert as a low income tract where a substantial number or substantial share of residents does not have access or easy access to a supermarket or a large grocery store. According to a Towson study, in 2018, 64% of the zip codes in Baltimore County are considered food deserts and contain predominantly low-income and minority neighborhoods. While Baltimore County residents are able to acquire food, the fact that they live in a food desert means they do not have convenient access to fresh or nutritious food from retailers. More often than not, individuals and families living in a food desert rely on prepackaged and processed foods, which are high in sugar, salt, and saturated fat. This kind of diet leads to health problems such as obesity, high cholesterol, heart disease, and more. HB 680 will empower Baltimore County to combat this food desert by giving property tax incentives to grocery stores that open in these areas. This will give previously underserved communities access to healthier choices and improved qualities of life outcomes. Additionally, a county health ranking and roadmap study found that grocery stores can improve perception of food access, neighborhood satisfaction, and mental health as well. Lastly, incentivizing grocery stores to open in predominantly low-income and minority neighborhoods would boost the economy by providing jobs to the area that need them the most. For those reasons, I request a favorable report, and I'll entertain any questions. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Any questions for the sponsor? Delegate Mangione.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Delegate Brooks. Quick question, because I'm trying to learn more about food deserts and the definition, because I prior to coming here, I never really heard the term. How far, I guess, is the distance from, do you have to be, or I guess to do as a supermarket have to be from the general neighborhood that you're talking about to consider the area a desert?
Okay, in an urban or suburban setting, normally it's about 1 mile, but in a rural community is 10 miles.
Okay, because that, I mean, I 100% agree about the nutritious part. That's a different topic, but yeah, so 10, I understand the rural aspect of it, but if only a mile to me just doesn't seem that far away. That's my only.
Yeah, I understand, and what we're talking about, nutritious food. You know, you can get the pre.
But yeah, I agree with you on that. But that's a
yeah. This is fresh and nutritious food. That's normally the qualification that they use for determining whether or not it's a food desert.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Sure, you're quite welcome.
Delegate Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for the bill. I think this is an important issue. On the east side, we've lost a lot of supermarkets. So I think this is something we should really strongly consider. I have a concern, and it's this. We always call them food deserts, but it's my feeling that food deserts are consequences of our economic policies, including taxes. And I would consider them a result of our policies, including taxes. So my first question is, would this be a tax credit that a current supermarket could use, or would this be exclusively for new facilities that opened in what would be considered one of the eligible areas?
Okay, yeah, the eligible areas would be, well, I answer your second question first. The eligible areas would be determined by Baltimore County, the county exec, and then the county council of people. They'll vote on that. And then it would be for new construction and or major remodeling.
Okay.
Would be the two categories. Yeah.
So I'll give you an example. And Logan Village, Gershbeck shut down. Great supermarket, great family supermarket, known for their deli, their produce, their really just a great mom and pop shop in the middle of a highly dense area. So we would have to wait for them to shut down, and then a new business could obtain the credit. Am I understanding that correct?
That, or either they could remodel, and that could also be one way of qualifying for that.
So this will be my final question.
Delegate.
Last question. So here's my concern. Why not just, if an area is struggling, why not just make the applicability equitable across the board, as opposed to kicking this to the county? If the determinant is a low income track, why not just say, when average medium incomes hit a certain level, supermarkets in this area can get this tax credit? Because what happens frequently is, on the east side, we would lose a supermarket, and then that community, we would actually have to lose something before a struggling business.
Delegate Brooks, if you could address the question.
Could obtain this.
Yeah. You don't have to lose. They can improve. They can do a modern, like I say, new construction or either improvements. So there's probably room in there for them to be able to qualify. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Delegate Brooks, thank you for this bill. I'm going to move on in the interest of time. HB 682 is your next bill, Baltimore County hunting non-game birds and mammals. Go ahead when you're ready. I believe you have one speaker.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. Chair Young and delegation members, thank you for the opportunity to testify on behalf of HB 682. For the record, I'm Delegate Ben Brooks, representing the 10th Legislative District here in Baltimore County. HB 682 repeals a prohibition on Baltimore County against the hunting or attempting to hunt non-game birds and mammals without first obtaining a hunting license. This bill would only apply to non-protected game birds and mammals, as defined by the Baltimore Natural Resources, PAR 10-101. Non-game birds and mammals means every wild mammal and bird not classified as game birds and mammals, or any part, eggs, offspring, of that. Farmers can experience damage to crops, equipment, and destruction to their underground irrigation systems. Wildlife damage and nuisance situations are expected to continue and increase. Only in Baltimore County are farmers required to obtain license before protecting their farm from these creatures. By reducing non-game birds and mammals from their properties, it will provide economic relief for farmers of Baltimore County. For that reason, I request a favorable report. And Mr. Chair, we do have one individual that's going to be testifying on behalf of this, Mr. Ferguson.
Mr. Ferguson, when you're ready. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. This is Colby Ferguson,
with Maryland Farm Bureau. And we're trying this again. COVID got us a couple of years ago and we weren't able to finish the deal. And then last year with the whole virtual format, just challenges trying to get this bill up and running. And one thing that I did want to make sure, I think Delegate Brooks did a great job of explaining what the bill does. I just want to kind of get into the weeds a little bit. It says non-game birds and mammals. Basically what that means is that's the distinguishing between the game, the things that have hunting seasons. So that we're not talking about deer or geese or ducks or any of the other type of wildfowl that would fall under the hunting seasons. This is just talking about the things that aren't in the hunting seasons. And so basically this was created back a couple of years, actually 1990s when the bill was passed. And it was a solution that didn't really fix a problem. And it was actually a Frederick County issue, and Baltimore County signed on to the bill when it passed back in 1990. And what happened was it was two individuals that were out. One got excited, went to shoot a groundhog. The other person was in front of him. It hit the person. Didn't kill anybody, but they were like, "Why are these people why are we having this type of issue?" And so they went to DNR. DNR basically said we can't do any kind of training for people like this. The only training is through if you get a hunting license. They're like, okay, well, we'll just make them get a hunting license. Well, the challenge you have with that means everybody, and that's not just going out and hunting deer and things like that we think about. But if you decide you want to put a trap, let's say you have a groundhog that on your property at your house, and you put a trap out to catch it out from underneath your garage or something like that. In Baltimore County, you are actually required to get a hunting license and wear orange while you're doing that. And obviously no one ever gets caught for doing that kind of stuff, but that actually falls into this letter of the law. And so basically this bill,
if you could summarize.
Okay, I'm finishing up. This bill just basically removes Baltimore County. All the other 22 counties don't have this. It is the Baltimore County thing. And we hope that you will move this forward this year.
Thank you. Questions for the speaker or the sponsor, Delegate Ruth?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I do appreciate the need that farmers have to be able to control, pests on their property, and certainly would support something along those lines. But I'm concerned that this seems to be rather broad. You talk about, groundhogs and farms, but this just appears to be removing a provision that says a person may not hunt or attempt to hunt non-game birds and mammals in Baltimore County without obtaining a license. So it would seem like that would open up for anybody to kill anything as long as it's not a game bird. And I just wondered if you could address that.
Sure. Pretty much, I guess if you looked at it that way, that you would be that way. But I mean, this doesn't supersede any kind of like Baltimore City or any city ordinances that don't allow hunting or guns or anything like that. It wouldn't allow you to be able to basically circumvent those laws. So this is pretty much a rural area concern, and it would fall under the non-game. And basically it just conforms Baltimore County with the rest of the state. Right now it's you get up into the northern part of the county where you get close to Carroll and people are right on the line. You've got Department of Natural Resources looking, okay, am I in Carroll? Am I in Baltimore? Am I in Hartford? Am I in Baltimore? And it just has an issue there. And quite frankly, a lot of farmers don't even know that this is even a rule. And we're just trying to clean up the language so we don't have any people getting $200 fines for not wearing orange.
Yes, we certainly don't want that. But Delegate, I wondered if you had considered a more narrow approach.
Well, right now, this says the farmer on that farmer's property, that they're going to be that they won't need a license on their property. Now, if you're going to go and try to hunt on other properties, you do have to obtain a license. So
okay, thank you.
Thank you. That's never mind. Thank you.
Okay, Delegate Belcastro.
Thank you so much for bringing the bill forward. Just really quickly, it's about the education and training component. I quickly went on the DNR website this morning, and it looks like it's actually a really quick, easy class in order to get that hunting license that you need in order to take care of the issues that you've described on your own property. So I just wanted to speak to that. It doesn't seem like it's very burdensome, and to the point that you made up that happened years ago, why this law came about. Maybe this is a great reminder for individuals about gun safety, taking this really quick, easy course. So I just wanted you to speak to that. It doesn't seem too burdensome, but if you have any other opinions on that, I'd love to hear it.
Sure. So just to give you the example of why it came forward in Frederick County, and we addressed it back in Frederick County about 4 years ago. We actually have a farmer that sent one of his hired hands out into a field out closer to the road to take care of some groundhogs. They had broken an axle on a tractor in a groundhog hole. And so while he was walking out across there, Natural Resources Police came up. Now, we're not in the middle of hunting season, so we're not like in the wintertime. And the Natural Resources Police came up and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" The guy said, "Hey, my boss told me to go out and try to take care of some of these groundhogs." And he says, "Do you have a hunting license?" And he says, "Well, yeah, I do." He said, "I haven't updated it for this year because it's not hunting season." And he says, "Well, the way the law is that you have to have a hunting license, a valid hunting license, and you have to be wearing orange." So even though this gentleman had a hunting license from the prior season, hadn't updated because it wasn't deer hunting season yet, he was cited for, he didn't get a violation for not having a hunting license because it just hadn't been renewed yet, but he got a $200 fine because he wasn't wearing orange. And so we're just trying to clear up this big issue that, I understand that the vast majority of these people already have a hunting license, but it just is, whether you have it updated, because it's only an annual deal. And if you haven't gone in to get your new license for the next hunting season, you're found in violation in Baltimore County.
It just seems like if we're going to be utilizing guns here in Baltimore County, it just seems like wearing an orange vest and doing a small training course seems like a small thing to do to make sure we're keeping people safe. But thank you so much for your answer.
Thank you, Delegate Cardin.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ferguson, thank you. I like this bill. I think that safety of our animals probably transcends the safety of groundhogs. Just one quick question. If I'm on my 1 acre property, 1.5 acre property in Baltimore County, am I allowed to take out a gun and start shooting groundhogs on my property, or are there county ordinances stopping me from doing that?
It would all depend on where you're at exactly. If there's no county ordinance that says that hunting is not allowed in that area, then yeah, you would be able to go get a license and go do it now. So all we're not basically taking it from being not allowed to being allowed. We're just basically removing this burdensome issue.
If we pass this legislation and I wouldn't be required to get a license, I could just go take a shotgun. If I live on, I think that there are rules when you're on a urban setting, but if I'm in a rural setting with an acre or two of land, I may be able to just go out and start. That's a little. I'm wondering if we can just focus just on perhaps on agricultural farmland, but maybe not. I'm thinking about that. But we're the only jurisdiction in the entire state that has this, right?
Yes.
So we would just be conforming with the rest of the state if we pass this law.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Good conversation to have with the sponsor, Delegate Hill. Last question.
Okay, Mr. Ferguson, I think I understand what the goal is, and I'm curious about why you're not simply saying, someone with a license that license continues for from non-game beyond the season, so you have an open season and you have these other animals. For non-game birds and mammals, why don't you just allow the license that they have for game birds and mammals to cover non-game regardless of the season? Because it seems like what you're doing here is the reverse of what we're often accused of, where we're doing something for non-agricultural residents, not taking in mind how it affects people who live on farms. And it seems like you're trying to affect folks who live on farms without taking into account, people who may decide that this means that they can go out and, I don't know, take a bow and arrow and shoot cats in the neighborhood because there are feral cats in their neighborhood. I'm not, why are you not just allowing the ones with licenses, for those licenses to apply for non-game birds and mammals?
Well, the non-game, that just in the name of it is stuff that is not regulated by the Department of Natural Resources. So they wouldn't, the law, the regs, the policies within DNR don't have, there's nothing in there to regulate how those are done. It's just this was a piece of statute that was thrown in that really, it's kind of almost impossible to enforce because it's only in Baltimore County, and it's hard for the Natural Resources Police to find out whether, okay, was that during hunt? It's just a challenge to enforce, really, and that's what DNR will tell you. But to your discussion, the way the law is right now, in Baltimore County, you could pretty much do exactly what you just said, and be done with or without a hunting license. And basically what we're trying to do is that hunting license is not, it didn't fix the problem, what the solution was trying to do. And we're just trying to get rid of unintended consequences, what we're really trying to get rid of here.
Thank you very much. We have one person that had signed up to speak that was in the waiting room, did not recognize them. Ms. Joanne Chasen, if you'd like to present for a minute, go ahead.
Sure. So thank you, Delegate, Chairperson, and also thank you, Delegate Brooks, for sponsoring this bill. I think both Delegate Brooks and Colby addressed some of the main issues. Some things I can add. Being a farmer and living on a farm, I personally have had animals injured from the incidences. One incident I can tell you about is when my dogs were badgering a groundhog. And to be quite honest, I thought I was doing it a favor by euthanizing the groundhog, but not even knowing at the time that I was breaking the law by not having a hunting license. So years later that I learned that I had broken the law that day. But there were countless other situations where my dogs were injured, requiring emergency care for this. But the bottom line, not to reiterate anything else that anyone else has already said, the bottom line is that Baltimore County farmers deserve the same rights as every other farmer in the state. And that is all we are asking for. We are simply asking to be treated the same as every other farmer in the state of Maryland.
Thank you very much. That ends the testimony and the hearing for HB 682. We'll be moving into the voting session. First bill on the agenda is HB 192, Baltimore County Board of Education student member voting. Delegate Eversole, we had this, that was not for me. At last week's meeting, we had passed as a delegation amendment 58611 6-1, which requires the student member to be trained. There was a discussion that moved into voting on amendment 926217-1, which would require all the board members that are on the board to be trained. Delegate Bhandari, give you the con. What's the status of the amendment discussion with the members that have concerns with it?
Yeah, I would like to pull the second amendment. Yes.
You would like to withdraw your amendment?
Yeah, withdraw. Yeah, this second amendment, and the first amendment already passed. Now I would like to move the bill.
Excuse me, I think that's my job there, Delegate Bhandari, but I'll second the motion.
Second the motion to move the bill as amended.
Yes.
There was a motion and a second discussion. I see Delegate Kathy Schulecker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, Delegate Bhandari, review what you just did.
I can review it for you as the committee chair, Delegate
That's
Shaleka.
fine, whomever would like to.
The amendment we
Thank you.
passed last week, I believe I read the number to you then, would require the student member to get training before they can vote on the budget. The amendment that he offered would have had the other members, but he has withdrawn that amendment.
Okay, so the bill can you review to us the bill as it is?
The bill as amended would allow the student member to vote on matters of the operating and capital budget after they receive a training that is designed by, I think, members of the board and members of the administration together.
And did you get during discussion last week, somebody asked to get a legal opinion on that?
That was on the amendment that was withdrawn.
I thought it was on the whole bill, just on the amendment.
Just on the amendment, from my understanding, so, and that amendment was just pulled, so.
And, okay, so there is no legal opinion out there about whether a student, teenager can vote on a bill on a budget of this size?
Well, this isn't a new precedent-setting piece of legislation. Other counties already do this.
Yeah, I think Anne Arundel County has this in court, so it's only in one county and they're actually in court litigating it, so it's not widely practiced, just to be
Understood.
sure. But we don't have a legal opinion. We haven't
No, we
asked.
don't. Any other discussion on the bill? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and call a vote for a roll call. Delegate Erickson?
No.
Mr. Chair, I had my hand up.
I did not see your hand, Delegate Bodler. I apologize.
That's
So go
all
ahead
right.
with your statement.
The question I have is, I'd like to know how the board weighed in on this, because I had received information from them saying that they did not support this bill, that they did not have a majority of the votes to support this bill. And in the past, we've had bills before us where it was, they were defeated because the board did not respond to those particular pieces of legislation. So I'm just
For clarity,
curious
Mr.
what
Chair,
is the
because we're in
Go
the
ahead.
interest of time,
Delegate.
for clarity, the board decided not to take a position on this bill. They did not take it up as part of their legislative agenda.
That's my understanding as well, that this is not part of the board's legislative agenda for 2020.
Just in case anyone wants to know, the Teachers Association of Baltimore County and the county executive have both come out in support of this bill.
Understood.
All right,
Any
thank
further
you.
discussion? Delegate Erickson was in the negative, correct?
Oh.
Understood. Delegate Belcastro,
Yes.
Delegate Bendari,
Yes.
Delegate Bodler,
No, I think this is explaining my
Delegate Brooks,
vote.
Delegate Brooks,
Yes.
Delegate Cardin,
Yes.
Delegate Ebersol,
Yes.
Delegate Feldmark,
Yes.
Delegate Forbes,
Oh.
Delegate Grammer,
No.
Delegate Guyton,
Yes.
Delegate Hill,
Yes.
Delegate Impalaria, Delegate Jackson,
Yes.
Delegate Jalisi,
No.
Delegate Jones.
Yes.
Delegate Long,
No.
Delegate Mangione,
No.
Delegate Metzger,
No.
Delegate Ruth,
Yes.
Delegate Stein,
Yes.
Delegate Shalega,
No.
Chair votes yes. 13 in the affirmative. The bill as amended passes. Thank you very much, everyone. Moving to HB 261. Baltimore County Career Exploration Development Activities. Delegate Grammer's bill is the Java Act.
Yes.
Report from the subcommittee.
Subcommittee, the bill is presented without.
This-
Passed unanimously.
Whoa, stand by,
I'm
stand by.
sorry, I think it's Education Committee,
This was
Mr.
an-
Metzger. I'm sure your
Sorry,
committee would
Delegate
have loved to
Metzger,
have
this is the
considered
other.
it as well.
I'm sorry.
Perhaps he has the report right.
Go ahead, Delegate.
We'll move quickly because I see we're at 10:58. The bill was presented not in the form that we passed last year. It required the amendment that we attached to it last year. The amendment was submitted that would stipulate that an executive branch or the government could not interfere with coffee sales, as long as it is administered by or directed at students with individual education programs. We adopted the amendment unanimously, and we adopted the bill unanimously. I move the amendment.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, on the bill as amended.
Move favorable, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Motion and a second. The If everyone's okay with a voice vote, unless anyone opposes, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Seeing none, thank you. Moving to HB 265, Baltimore, excuse me, let me stand by on that one. Moving to HB 446, Baltimore County Deposition of Marriage Ceremony Fees, Delegate Forbes. Report from the subcommittee. Delegate Carter.
This bill passed unanimously from the subcommittee. And what it does is it just dedicates all $25 to the Maryland Historical Trust that comes from marriage licenses that are purchased at the time of the marriage in Baltimore County.
Motion on the bill.
I'm sorry, not the license. I'm sorry, not the license. It's the marriage ceremony, the purchase of a marriage ceremony, $25.
Delegate Forbes is ready to jump right in there. Is there a motion on the bill?
Move the bill.
Favorable.
There's a
Second.
second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Seeing none, bill passes. Moving to HB 265, Baltimore County Nuisance Actions Community Association Standing, Delegate Grammer. Report from the committee, Delegate Metzger.
Yes, sir. I don't have my notes in front of me, but I remember it passed unanimously. This was the bill that now Senator Sidmore put in several years ago. Just a few amendments that the technicality things, it worked. Everything's fine.
Just to clarify.
Delegate Metzger, can you repeat which?
Stand by. My vote sheet says that Delegate Jalisi was in the negative on the
Yes.
subject. It was
Yes.
4-1. Is there an amendment, or you're just mentioning that the bill as it is now was in the posture?
No, I don't think
There are no
so.
amendments. Got it. Delegate Jalisi, we have you in the negative on the subcommittee. Is that what you were about to clarify?
Yes, I just
Okay.
wanted to make sure that it's correct. the record
We
is
have you in the
correct.
negative.
Thank you.
Is there a motion on the bill?
Move the bill.
Second, is there a second?
Second.
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 On the bill. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed?
Yes, I am.
No words, just raise your hand. Delegate Jalisi is in the negative. Is there anyone else opposed to the bill? Raise your hand in the chat, or excuse me, in the Zoom. Delegate Jalisi in the negative. The bill passes. Thank you, folks. One last bill, HB 332, Baltimore County Property Tax, Homeowners Property Tax Credits. Delegate Long, report from the committee, Delegate Metzger.
Yes, that was a tie vote. However, just as soon as we closed the meeting, Delegate Delisi called because he lost his internet service and he broke the tie and he voted in the affirmative on this one.
You voted in the affirmative.
Yes.
And just to confirm that he mentioned it to you, did you mention it to Delegate, excuse me?
Yes.
To Barb McLean?
Yes.
Got
I'm
it.
pretty sure my staff did.
We'll confirm that and make sure that we have it, the subcommittee vote as 3-2. With that being said, is there a motion on the bill? Oh, excuse me.
Can I ask a quick question?
Go ahead, Delegate, since you're on this.
Where does the county land on this bill?
They were opposed, I believe.
Okay,
I don't have the
thank you.
paper in front of me.
Thank you.
He's opposed. Understood. Motion on the bill. Nope. Delegate Grammer, is this on the bill?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a brief suggestion because I sense there's resistance. And my suggestion to Delegate Long is that maybe we can defer this until we can have more than, a 1-minute discussion, because I think this is actually a very good bill that's written properly. And if we take a vote now, I don't think we're going to have an opportunity to give it the discussion it deserves, but I'll defer.
I agree with Delegate Grammer. It's 11:03. We're 3 minutes over. This is the last bill that we have to hear. And in order to give it a proper due deference, we'll hold it until next week. With that, everyone, thank you for the time and the discussion. And I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you all. Enjoy your weekend. You can go ahead and close it down, Barb.
Hey, Pat, can you call me right quick?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thanks.